Hey guys, just waiting for Christina. Thanks for joining. Hello. Yeah, of course. Great. Beautiful. All right, and I want to view this. And there we go. Beautiful. All right. Thank you for joining us today, everyone. Looks like we got 6 people watching, 8 people now. Hopefully, we'll get a little more people coming in as we keep moving forward. Thank you for joining us, Christina.
Thank you for having me here.
Of
Hello,
course.
I already know a few people.
Oh, really? Is that, you know,
Yeah,
Maria? She said hi. I don't know, maybe you know.
yeah.
Okay. Hi, Maria. So I just want to make a correction before we start. So even though Christina lived a lot of time in Spain, she's actually Romanian. And I just want to make sure that we make that clear before we start, so that way people don't get confused. Hi, Catalina. So without further ado, it looks like we have a good amount of people in. We'll start the interview. And so just a quick update. Patricia, she had her baby, Chloe, and so she's on maternity leave. So that's why you're seeing my ugly face and instead of hers. So please excuse that. But anyways, let's get started. And yeah, so Christina, I know that you are currently in New Jersey, which is awesome. You've been able
Yes.
to go to the US quite a bit throughout your career, which is beautiful. And you have your, you know, in terms of career-wise, you're quite early on in your career. So that's great to be able to make that transition so early on. But yeah, let's start out with just, you know, who you are in terms of like your childhood, what led you towards architecture. You know, it takes a special kind of person to do architecture. You see the world, you see problems, you find solutions, and all that great stuff. But if I recall, you know, we've talked a little bit before, and you did mention that music was kind of what pushed you towards the creative side of things. But if you could just explain a little bit more, like, you know, where you were born, your family, like what led you towards architecture.
Sure, sure. So, well, I was born in Romania and I lived there half of my life until I was 15 years old. I, my parents, it was kind of a decision of my parents back then because I was 7 years old when they chose for me career in music. So I went to a school where I had like normal classes in the morning, music classes in the afternoon.
Wow.
And I played violin for 8 years. And
Eight
then,
years.
yeah, and then after the fourth year, I started playing piano as well. And in that school, we had two options, either to study music and you would start as a child, or after like at around 10 years old, you would be able to choose artistic side. And back then I had no idea that I was going to pursue an architectural degree at some point.
You were quite
And
young.
even, yes. So now, like, even know people that know me, like back from back then, they are like, interesting. How did you choose like to go to the other side? Because
Yeah.
some of us were like the musicians and the other were like the artists, the one that were painting and doing sculpture stuff.
Right.
So when I was 15, I mean, my mom always worked abroad, and I started to travel, and I
Wow.
discovered Spain, and I was like, oh, I like this place. It's it's a nice place to live, and yeah, I decided like just jump into the pool and just learn to move there and just take the risk, and
Mhm.
that's where I discovered that I would like to study architecture. I mean, I don't know what
Beautiful.
my life would have been like right now
Right.
if it wasn't for that decision.
So, I mean, that's very beautiful. That's amazing. So would you, it's interesting because it was more of like classical music, right? Classical music
Yes.
theory. And yeah, and I mean, in a way, I guess it is kind of it makes sense. That transition makes sense because classical musical theory is very like structured, and there's a lot of, from what I understand, I'm not a music theorist, but it makes sense that you kind of moved over to architecture in a way because there is certain creative aspects, but also logical and like mathematical aspects to it as well.
Yes, that's something that some people told me at some point, that music and mathematics use the same part of the brain or something
Right.
like that, I heard.
Yeah.
And uh, yeah, um, I guess they are somehow related. And I've always been like not 100% like technical, not
Right.
100% artistic. So I think architecture was like for me the right balance. And
Mhm.
whenever I came to Spain, I was very good at math. Like I remember that back then uh, like whatever we had in the class, I already knew that part
Wow.
of the
The
class,
course.
and
Yeah.
yeah, of the course. And then I discovered they put me in an easy class where I had like flawed and technical like drawings and paintings, like for people that need to learn a new language. That was my first year, so like it was diversity class. So that's where I learned about technical drawing, and I was like, I like maths. I really enjoyed drawings, and I was like, where this is going to take me, like what can I do with
Yeah.
this? And
That's
then
so
I just
cool.
got intrigued, and I just made more research. This is my thing.
That's great. And at such a young age, what, like how old would you say you were about when you started doing the technical drawings in school?
I was 16 years old.
Okay, so that's yeah, that's like perfect timing to have found that because then you have to start thinking about like college, what's the next step, all that. And so did you stay in Spain for university? I believe you did, right? In Valencia, right?
I did high school in Valencia, but
As well.
then I went for college in Catalonia and studied
Catalonia.
in Reus.
Reus. Nice. Very
So
cool. And so what did you focus on for university? Like what did you focus on a specific area of architecture or
Not really, but I've always been passionate about the projects and urban planning. So that
Mhm.
was always been my priority. Like I also like as an architect, you also need to know like the technical part, construction, facilities, all of
Right.
that. But the fun part was the designing
Yeah.
process and all the way you get solutions and
Mhm.
solving uh,
Real world
and
problems.
be like
Yeah.
it's like nurturing. You become creative and it feels good. You cannot say that you're working, because if you enjoy like the process, it's just uh, uh,
Natural.
uh, yeah, natural, exactly.
That's awesome. And so, what kind of inspirations do you draw from? And when you were in Spain, is that part of like you drew inspiration from certain Spanish architects, or you have what were the architects in your mind at that time that were kind of like, wow, like that's who I want to be, you know?
You mean before college?
Yeah. Or before college, during college, and then like, before your career, who are like the people
Before
that
I
you,
got into architecture,
yeah.
I like perspectives.
Hmm.
And I also I love photography, trying to find angles to represent even objects, buildings. But I did not know much about certain architect before starting college. It's like you are young and
Right.
you don't really know what you're getting into until you are there, unless you have a parent or someone that's architect. So
Right. That makes sense. And so if you, I'm interested. So if you couldn't be an architect, what would you have done instead?
well, at some point back in Romania, I thought that I was not going to have a career in music because I didn't see myself into a philharmonic or teaching or any of that sort of
Hmm.
thing. So at some point back in Romania, I thought maybe something with languages, like political science, or
That's
I
what I
had
did.
no idea. I was so young and I was like, that sounds cool, and
Yeah.
I don't know I don't know what would have happened, but I at some point I even got into I studied history. I went to an Olympics in history at some point.
Wow.
And now when I tell my mom, because she was abroad, I'm like, I went to that thing, and she was like, seriously, you were that bored? So I don't know. I enjoy learning. I'm like a
Mhm.
sponge
A
and
sponge. That's a good
trying
one.
to absorb as much as possible. But I don't know. It architecture, and it was just based on making a decision, and that decision led uh, to this result, and
Yeah.
I'm happy with it. But all I can say is the moment I decided that I wanted to study architecture, like when I had to fill the paper, to choose the university, I was like,
Mhm.
just architecture. I was that stubborn that I would not do anything but that. So
That's so great. And so I think maybe you could be an anthropologist. You could have been an anthropologist maybe because you said your mom traveled a lot, lots of cultural mixes of cultures, and who knows, maybe.
yeah, I don't know. I also I loved maths a lot, and back
Mhm.
in high school, technical drawing and maths was my favorite part. But then on the
Mhm.
other side, I had a teacher, Spanish teacher, and they were like, you should study Spanish. And I'm like, I've been in this country for 3 years only. It's like, I mean, I like both areas. It's like, I cannot. So probably I have to choose this career because it has both words, like
Right.
the artistic, the technical, a little bit of
Mhm.
philosophy we also
Right. Yeah. And yeah, definitely an understanding like the role of architecture, creating the spaces that people will interact with one another. It's very interesting, very interesting. So, what led you to do the U.S. exchange student program? I believe you said you went to Missouri to study for a little
yes,
bit of time. If you could explain a
correct.
little bit more of that. Mhm.
So I did the 5 years of architecture, and after
Mhm.
finishing the fifth year, which was back in 2014, it's been a while, I realized that I didn't do any Erasmus program, and I was missing all the fun part of
Right.
being a
Yeah.
student. And
Mhm.
I was like, I saw they sent us there was a program to study in the US, and that one was for Boston. So I applied to that, and I was like, okay, I have to set the high goal. Like if I have to do my senior project after a while, at least I'm going to try
Right.
something very very
Daring.
exciting.
Yeah.
So I just got into that, and I applied for Boston, and they gave me the placement. But after a while, I was removed the placement, and I was like, I got a little bit stubborn. I'm like,
Yeah.
now I really want to do that. It's like you
Right.
took this from me. Now I really want to
Yeah.
do that. So I went to the international center, and I kind of complained a little bit that, and I was like, I really want to do this now. It's
Of
like
course.
it's my dream. Now you make
Yeah.
this
Once they say
become my
no,
dream.
yeah.
So they were like, okay, don't worry, we'll have another program that you can choose like more universities in the US. And they were trying to convince me to do an Erasmus as well in Poland or other countries in Europe. And I was like, no, I want to go to the US. So in the end, like it's after a while, I thought, well, I'm not going go there and I'll just start my senior project. So I started my senior project, and after like a couple of months, they told me, oh, you've been accepted. And I had to choose like 10 university, and I was accepted to like the 7th university that I had no idea where it was. And then I was like, okay, I like the most important, the 3 ones. And then I was like, I just have to fill this form. So
Right.
I got accepted to Missouri, and I must say that even that's in the middle of Midwest, to not say nowhere,
Yeah.
it turned out being a very like an enriching experience, and you get immersed into culture, like the university, how everything works, the system, the language.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's like that was at the end of my of college that I decided to come here, and that was it basically.
So that's amazing. And for those of you who don't know, so Erasmus is like a cultural student exchange within Europe. And then Missouri is near close to Chicago, if we're going to pick a city, right? Like St. Louis is
The
what's
state, yeah.
known in that area. And so when you were there, if you could give us kind of like the three or like a highlight and then kind of like a struggle, like what was like difficult, like the cultural shock, kind of give us a taste for that in case some of the people that are currently watching are finishing up
Well,
university and yeah.
one of the first things I had to deal with was the credits that are
Mm,
very different here in the
yeah,
US
that's a
than
great
are
point.
in Spain.
Mhm.
Because in Spain, I just needed like 15 credits. So I chose 15 credits in the US, which is double. It's like 30 credits in Spain.
Mhm.
And I took 5 classes, 3 in engineering and 2 in arts. And after the first week, I was like, wait a minute, I have just too many classes and too many hours. And
Yeah.
I don't have time to, to do
To
much
live
after
life.
classes.
Yeah.
So that's one of the most important things one
Mhm.
has to know or find out before coming to university here or like exchange program. And rather than that, I mean, the like here you don't have like numbers, you don't get 7 and 9, you have like ABC.
Right.
The system,
That's a
like
good point.
the
Yeah.
whole system in general is quite different. And I try to just learn in the class, but also have fun and
Right.
explore and travel
Mhm.
and meet people.
Right, that's perfect. I was gonna segue into so like a big part of the professional experience is networking, right? Is like meeting people that later on might help you, you know, get a position or might help you meet someone that can help you to get to the US. So what was that experience like? Was the university active in that sense, like in terms of like promoting like networking events? How did you go about trying to make those connections in the university setting, and then I'll ask you about that later on in terms of like Inglese and other.
Sure. So in back in Missouri, there were a website called Hire a Lion, and you would always find like jobs either in campus or off campus.
Interesting.
So I would try to apply to whatever I was interested into that, because
Hmm.
my after like uh, my program in college, I would have been able to extend my visa for another 4 months with an internship. So back then I tried to like to find like an internship. So I applied to those companies through the university website, and then also in campus you can go. There was like um, uh, a lady that she was helping people like do their resume, which here it's quite different than the style. And yeah, it's when I first tried to do a portfolio and know what I needed to do to apply. But yeah, and rather than that, I also like knowing people and telling like American people that I met there that I've been interested in doing an internship so I can stay here longer and get some professional experience. So I got in contact with also an architect from Kansas City, BNIM, the company is called. And I sent my resume and my portfolio, but I don't know. I don't know. I wasn't lucky. It wasn't the time for me, I guess. And also that was the only person that could have introduced me. So I think the contacts means a lot. And I think I mentioned that at some point that I wish I knew Architect US back then.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. And okay, so then after you finished that experience, you went back to Europe, to Spain. What did you do after?
Yes, right after I went back to Spain and uh, started to work again on my senior project. But
What was that
before,
about, if you don't mind me asking? What did you focus
yes,
on?
it was a Center for Performing Arts in
Oh, that makes
Valencia.
sense.
Yes. And also I had a building that was apartments as well,
Mm,
because residential has always been something that I enjoy doing. So I had an empty spot there and I was like, this could work with the Center for the Performing Arts for the students. Yeah, but the project, I just wanted to do something different and make more research about this field, and also from my experience with music.
right.
mm, I just wanted to explore this
This is the
area.
same project that you submitted to the portfolio challenge, correct? If I
Yeah,
believe.
that was one
Yeah,
of the main
great.
projects. Yeah.
Just so you guys know, if you want to go check it out later, it's on our blog, architectus.com/blog. You can find all kinds of different portfolio challenge. What that means is like we have our participants as well as our community submit their portfolio, and then we work with them to select which projects, could gain some interesting insight and show people what kind of projects people are working on. Just wanted to do that little plug. Sorry, excuse me. uh,
No problem.
and so once you were in Spain, you knew you wanted to go back to the U.S. That was on your mind. How did you come to the decision that you wanted to go back to the U.S. and this time professionally and work in the U.S.?
uh, I knew that at some point I wanted to do that thing that I missed back in 2015, which was gaining professional experience here.
Mhm.
But I didn't know like at what point. So after I finished the senior project that took me about a year and a half, almost 2 years, I went to London because I have some family there. I spent 2 months, almost 3 months there, and also speaking English and being a closer country. So I went to London. I tried to apply myself there. It was summer, and I couldn't find like a position during that time, and I'm like I don't know how to stand still. I mean, and just knowing that in London they were looking for people with professional experience in Revit and not just like knowing Revit like academically. So I thought, well, I have to do a master, and I knew this architect in Valencia. So I was like, well, I can combine a master degree in BIM, Revit,
Right.
and at the same time get some working experience there. So after that, I started to get some offers from London, but I guess I was not, I did not wait enough I to to get to work there. And just after I finished the master and I found about the website, I was like, now I know what's the next step. So during the master, I kept myself applying, but also with no luck, like filling those pages like for hiring that you'll never get a reply. And
That's rough.
I was like, I'll keep trying and see what happens. And then I saw the website and I was like, now I have a good feeling that this is
Yeah.
going to be possible.
Give it a shot. That's great. Well, I'm glad that you found us, but also congrats to you for, being so proactive and pushing yourself to keep on applying even when you weren't even getting responses back from some of them. I mean, I've been there. That can be very disheartening. People, you're trying to find your place in your next step. But kudos to you for staying strong in trying to find that work. So you found us, which awesome. But in the end, you're the reason why you got the job. And so tell me kind of what the next steps were. So you were able to get work at Inglese, and you went over there and just if you could, because like not everyone has been able to work in the U.S. If you can just kind of give us an idea as to like what it was like when because you had experience before, but that was more in like an academic sense. Maybe give us an idea of like the differences between like academic relationships versus professional relationships in the US.
Sure. So, well, back in Valencia, I worked in an office where it was just me and not the other architect.
Mhm.
And here in the office, we're about 30 people, I think.
Wow.
And yeah, like in Spain, I also work with residential buildings. But one of the difference is that, almost the same time I worked here and I worked there, like here I did in Spain, I worked on 3 projects, and here it's just like face facing and everything. Like you have lots of projects going on, and sometimes you start with I mean, I know that other, like, depending on the company you work on, like you can have an experience on another, but in my case, like in our company, we do residential affordable
Mhm.
houses. That was something that was kept going during the pandemic also.
That's great.
And yeah, like here it depends. Like here you can have a project on your own, a small project, or you can work on a bigger project where other people collaborate, participate. You might start working on a feasibility, and then you can continue with the layouts, with the design development process. But sometimes you just start it, and then another person will continue with that project, and other times you
Hmm.
continue with the project that someone started. Whenever you work like on a larger scale project, when you do the construction documents, sometimes there are more people involved, and that's when my master degree was useful, because we use Revit, and usually we have a central model and local models. So each person works on a local file, and on the same project, each person might work on a specific side of the building. So sometimes you do that, and sometimes I work on the design, on the previous design, where um, I create my own file. It's not a shared file. I work on a file that I use Revit either for designing concept, facade,
Mhm.
design.
So your experience you would say your experience at the Masters with BIM has been very fruitful, and it's helped you to be able to make those kinds of transitions where it's like, oh, I'm going to start with a feasibility and then I have to pass it off. You would agree with that?
I mean, it helped me a lot, but I think, like, for example, like feasibilities, you start more in AutoCAD. Um, at least for the floor plans and then the elevations of the buildings, it's useful to use Revit, because then you model the building, see it's not just a 2D image, it's
Right.
you see it in 3D and you see the proportions and make some tweaks and see, well,
That's awesome.
this would have looked okay in a 2D, but in 3D I'm not as convinced. So Revit helps you like to visualize the global part of the building and details, structure, mechanical. So that was basically like what I did on the master, getting to explore of all parts of the building design in Revit, not just like the architectural, but also the structural and mechanical, electrical, plumbing
Wow,
in
that's
Revit.
very cool. So essentially, you get to build the building before you build it and make sure that all the mistakes are taken out before you get to the point where you're like, oh no.
Exactly, like
Yeah,
exactly. I think that's very useful, and I think the main thing about Revit is coordination between different teams.
right,
And one of the most important things is that you can visualize all parts of the project, and the more you detail, the closer you'll go to the reality.
right. And so that way you like with the construct, so you've been able to experience all phases, the construction documents, all phases of the project.
Yes, I worked on a couple of construction documents, one in AutoCAD and the other one in Revit. But I would say that most of the work I did was like I was more on the design side than um, the construction documents. That's why I'm saying that some people might tell you that, well, I work on a lot of refurbishment, while others might work on more new buildings, new designs. And yeah, my experience was I worked on more like existing new designs rather than refurbishment, and more on the design part of a project rather than the technical drawings. And
That's awesome.
yeah,
Now, in terms of your experience in English, one of the important parts of any professional experience is finding a mentor or finding people that you can kind of, I don't want to say uh, depend, but like you can count on to kind of, if you have a question or if you have certain like bigger picture questions about like your career, you have that go-to person. Have you been able to find that? Have you, and how, if so?
yes. Well, at Inglese, there are lots of young people, so you feel very comfortable asking questions. It's like the feeling I had the feeling of same as in university when, oh, I don't know, I'm going to ask this person, and there are always people like willing to help, and there's so much to learn, and just by asking, just get out of your comfort zone. Sometimes I'm shy, but I know, well, I have to do this because otherwise I'm not going to learn and I'm not going to figure this out. So you just have to go and ask and step out. And yeah, and then I also had the privilege, I'd say, to work with uh, one of the principals, and that way you learn even faster
Yeah,
and more, and so it was and it is a great experience. I mean, uh, it's always good to like to see how others people's vision and share yours, and try to come to the best product solution with the limitations you might have. Sometimes you have a client that uh, mm, ask you for certain things, and you have some limitations on the materials, and you just have to
Communicate those
find out, yeah,
limitations.
to
Yeah.
communicate and get to the best solution possible.
Mhm. And so have you been doing a lot of client facing within your position? And if so, how's that been, especially in like the American context?
Before the pandemic hit, we had more. I went to more meetings in person, but
Mhm.
after that happened, everything was through Zoom for me. So yeah, sometimes you have video calls, other times you're not ready for a video call and you're just listening and taking
Yeah.
notes and getting ready to make the changes required.
Hmm. That's awesome. And so you've been there for about how long now? About a year and a half or more now?
Uh,
2 years?
Almost 2 years.
2 years.
In
Wow.
in March, it's gonna be 2 years. Yeah.
Congratulations. And um, so you, what are your next steps, if you will, in terms of like where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in a couple of years?
Yeah, well, exactly where I see myself in 5 years, I guess it's a little bit unpredictable during
Of
these
course.
times, especially like 5 years ago. If you would have asked me, would you think that you'll be in New Jersey in 5 years? I was like, no way. So I'm not sure. I mean, I hope to be here. I don't know. Like at this moment, this is what I want, and I would love to grow more and learn more, and hopefully pursue a license in architecture here.
Mhm.
Uh, that's like a top goal that, as an architect in the U.S., you must have. But life will decide. I mean, as I said, small decisions can lead to bigger decisions, but I am willing to learn more and get more involved into the culture and the profession as
That's
an
awesome.
architect
That's great.
here.
And so if you had to, or if you were able to talk to your Christina from uh, like when she was just getting out of college and was trying to find her next step, what would be like three tips or three tips that you would give young Christina?
Uh, well, one of them, I guess, it's insist more and keep insisting. Because sometimes,
Mhm.
like in my case, well, I didn't get this opportunity now. I will work on other things, and then at some point the opportunity will come. So I guess one of the tips is like keep insisting as much and never give up, even when you see a door closed. Try to find a way, because I guess uh, that's the way. Mm.
There's always a
Obtaining,
way.
exactly, even if you don't see it at that moment. And another two tips. Oh.
Sorry, I put you on the
Tips.
spot.
Make another thing that's very important is like to make connections, establish connections. That's something that we've always been told
Mhm.
back in college,
Definitely.
because it's like what in the end will help you to open a door on another.
Mhm.
And another thing is get involved in other extracurricular
Mm.
activities. That's something that I can say a little bit I regret, because during college I was very focused. So I have to get those projects done. I have to focus on the academical part. And I guess I could have done a little bit more on participating in other sort of events. So I realized that when I was in fifth year and I went to Missouri, that's one thing that if you can like take advantage of all the events the university has, competitions and
Mhm.
everything you can do, just be proactive, take
Oh, that's
advantage of it.
great. That's a great segue because from what we've heard from different firms that are hiring, a lot of times they not only look at, you know, what you've done within architecture, but they also look at like
Exactly.
what have you done outside of architecture, because it's you're creating buildings that, you know, might be cultural buildings, like you said, for your final project in university. And also another thing that people should be aware of, especially with the US market, is Revit. Like you said, Revit is huge. Revit is the most sought after programming when it comes to people that are experts in that. It's a growing area, and it's a program that is relatively new in comparison to others within architecture. So your tips are spot on from like what I've been hearing on our end from firms as well. So that's great. And now you congratulations. I hear you did get a green card, so that's great. Congratulations on that.
It's in the process.
Or in the process. Sorry, I'll knock on wood. No jinxing it. But yeah, I wanted to thank you for joining us, and I'll pass it over to the audience to see if there are any questions. And obviously, if you want to add anything in terms of any insight or any recommendations for people, whether it be, you know, resources that people could use or anything like that, you're welcome to as well. Um, so let's see. Does anyone have any questions for Christina? Now is your time. Let's see. I'm gonna ask any questions. Alright. Doesn't look like we're getting any questions. I don't know why. Well, with that being said, no. We'll leave it at that. Thank you so much, Christina, for joining us, and please keep an eye out for any of her portfolio challenges, any of her new ones coming out that we have. And thank you, and come back in 2 weeks for the next interview. And thank you again. Oh, here we go. Here's a question. What would you say has been your main learning? What would you say it's been your main learning? What would you, yeah, do you have any,
Like in what sense, like learning?
during your
Oh,
American
like
experience? The
well,
main learnings for you.
main learning, I guess the process, like, well, you start like getting used to the system here, the work with inches, not the metric
Right.
system.
It's a great point.
And then after that, you just make a new step. And for me, I just got to feel more comfortable, like with the design development, the construction system used here in the US, which is quite different from what we learn and we do in Spain and in Europe. So especially residential, I think my main experience and what I've learned most is work like designing and getting through the different steps, as I said, from feasibilities to design development, producing the construction document, the whole steps of the residential part here in New Jersey and New York a little bit.
Okay, looks like now we're getting more questions. That's great. Thank you. What's been your favorite part of your experience since coming? I'm assuming they're in the US, since getting to the US. Your favorite part of your experience so far?
The favorite part, I mean,
It
I
doesn't have to
before
do with
the
architecture.
uh, before the pandemic, I was just I couldn't stand still, so I just took advantage of everything that was happening in the city,
Mm,
from musicals to going to a jazz event, or just going to the opera and all sorts of events and travel. as much as possible. And I'm glad I did that, because now we cannot do
Yeah.
as many things as before. So I'm really lucky I did it at the right time. So
Yeah. Perfect
exploring the
timing.
culture and seeing architectural masterpieces here in the US, that we have so many so close, taking advantage of that, being able to see the falling water was one of my favorite trips, I would say.
Great. And we have more questions. Wow. Would you please, yeah, would you please tell us which has been your biggest challenge?
Biggest challenge is at the beginning, every day is a challenge. The day you get out of your comfort zone and go outside, walk outside the door and meet new people, learn about other cultures, the way other people think, and then go to the office and have a different experience from what you've been used, and adapting. Basically, you just need to adapt to the new environment. And at the beginning, you adapt, and then you do the best you can and try to succeed at what you're doing.
Beautiful. Do you think someone with no experience could also try getting a job opportunity?
Uh, Absolutely, yes. Uh, that's uh, that's, I think, the first step you need uh, to achieve once you. I mean, the problem in Spain is that you can, a problem or not a problem, that it's the difference from here is that you can finish college and have no experience. So you can spend 6, 7, 8 years in college and with no experience. Whether here you study architecture for 5 years, then you start to work, and then you get license. In Spain, you get license, but you can have zero experience at the end of the career, or at least with the old system I studied back in Spain, because now the architecture degree changed a little bit. So I think it's mandatory, and it gives you confidence, and you get more proficient, and see how other people do, and just it's a learning. I think I would say you learn even more after, like, from the real work experience
Right.
than from the books and
It's
and
much more
classes.
hands-on, right? You're applying the
Yes.
theory and seeing it
So
happen.
I think that as soon as you get into the work experience, uh, the sooner you'll just decide, well, I want to uh, follow this path, or maybe some work experience can make you decide to do a certain master degree. Like, don't my advice is to not keep studying and studying and getting like 5 master's degree and no
Right.
experience, because then you'll end up probably like just keep learning and studying, which is also good if you decide to do that. But if you want to get like work experience, it's better to get immersed and involved into the process sooner, so you can make better decisions as you grow up in the field.
Great. Oh, this is a good question. The main differences between a European portfolio and an American portfolio. Are there differences? What would you say if there are?
um I I am not sure, because when I first started, like when my first portfolio had many pages, and with the tips that you guys gave us, I figured out it has to uh, have less weight as megabytes, and you have to focus on certain things. Because at the beginning I was like, yeah, I want to show like all the projects, like as many information as possible, and you just have uh, to make a selection and sell the best of your work. So I am not, like, I cannot say that I'm a master's at portfolios. So I mean, I would say that, but I'm not sure that back in Spain, I would focus more on showing just the project. I don't know, like here they might be also interested in seeing more construction details, not just like rendering and visuals, because from what I heard, there are people that are very high proficient at rendering, so you might want to share also other skills that you have.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's spot on. You should, yeah, with the US portfolio, you should definitely show more construction documents if you have them. That's a great point. Uh, Now another question here. Was it hard to adjust there? And what do you recommend to a person that wants to work there and possibly stay longer?
I think the key is just to be active and to not, I mean, to not be shy to ask. If I'm the person that asks many questions, so if I want to, if I have a doubt and I want to get it solved, I mean, I just have to find my ways to find the solution. And if I cannot find it by myself, then well, I have to find a person that can help me find out the solution, I guess.
Definitely.
So it's always good to ask
And be proactive. I think that's
exactly.
the point you're trying to make. And for, oh, okay. And we have another question here. In terms of salary, is it higher than in Europe? And they followed up with a second question saying, you can live on it in terms of the salary. You don't have to
Well,
say specific amounts, but you can compare, I guess.
um, I think everyone knows that it's this the economic situation is better here than in certain countries in Europe, and also the salaries and everything is better. Here you can live on your own, so you can make a living. Everyone I know that comes here makes it. I mean, I guess it depends on the experience. Like some people might make more than others. Others just I don't know. I think it's important to learn, not just the salary. So, but yeah, both things are important because in the end you need to live. But yeah, I survived so far. So
Yeah,
so I
exactly.
made it, and I was also able to travel and explore things. You just have um, to find ways. For
Properly
example, like
budget.
if yeah, and for example, if I wanted to go to musicals, sometimes ago, I also like look for what offers you'd have to get a nice deal, or like the Broadway lottery, other opportunities to help you save some budget. So it's a learning process. You learn to become an adult and manage money, so living on your own. But yeah, uh, I think you can also save something here, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'm half American, half Spanish, so I can attest that yes, although the pay in the US may be higher, there are some expenses that you might not be aware of coming from outside of the US. One of those expenses being health insurance. Unfortunately, we don't have universal health insurance yet. So that is an aspect. But yeah, Christina was saying, if you budget and you're finding those good deals, you can make it work for sure.
Yes, and I
And
mean,
yeah,
especially when you start, and it also depends on the experience you have and the skills you have. Um, there are like more things to take into consideration.
well, I think those are all the questions, and we're just about to run out of time. And with that being said, thank you so much to everyone that joined us. And of course, thank you to Christina for sharing your experience and all of your tips. They were spot on. Whether it be working on Revit, becoming a BIM expert, or, being proactive, properly networking. Those are all very important and should be considered when you're trying to make the move over to the US. And
Thank you very much for having me, for giving me this opportunity. A reason why I'm still here, and
Oh, you're
we're
the
helping.
reason.
Well, you helped me to get my, how they say, get your foot in the door, and
Yeah,
from there it was up to me what I was going to do. But the first step, it's getting here and get the experience and the job, and from there it's up to everyone to work hard and prove themselves they are worth it, I guess.
exactly. And with that, have a great night or day or wherever you may be. Thank you.
Thank you
Bye.
very much. Bye bye.